This evening's hobby enhancement is the last of the Toki Suntory whiskey. I've made some headway since the last video featuring these red-faced chaps. And more importantly, in about 3 hours from now, I've got my first game with this army, or part of it at least. So it's time to check in and see how it's all coming along. Now these warriors will look rather familiar. They're exactly the same as the ones I'd done before, same paint scheme and everything. The additional bunch of marauders are much the same as well, the same paint schemes for both. The main difference is, for some reason, I did bronze on the banner for the marauders. And I've gotten more comfortable and familiar with using transfers, and for some reason I don't have enough of the banners that have the chaos symbol molded into them to do all of the infantry units, so I'm doing some of them with transfers. But otherwise they should look very familiar from the last video. What I've added to this are a bunch of marauders, looking very maraudery. There's a few things I've noticed about marauders, particularly marauder cavalry. They seem to overcompensate with their banners. If you compare the marauders with their banners, here we go. Look at this comparison here between the marauder cavalry banner and the regular cavalry banner, and between the marauder infantry banner and the regular warrior banner. The marauders just seem to be tacking a few extra bits and bobs on there. It's like they're overcompensating for something. Now the marauders are very nice miniatures. Sometimes I make comment here and there about the dollar value to points value ratio. And this army is actually pretty good for dollars to points ratio. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It's not a huge miniature count army relative to the points. But the fiddliness to points ratio is really up there. I didn't think it was that bad for the warriors, but the amount of nooks and crannies and things you got to get into on these marauder cav just to paint a unit, and at the end of the day they're only 80 points. They're not going to be at the table that long unless they're running away from something. But you know, they come up okay. I'm using I don't know if there's a term for this, I'm calling it block and slop. So basically I just do the base coat neatly as I can, then I slop a whole fuck ton of Nuln oil over the top, hoover up the worst of the pooling spots, and that's it, they're done. It's worth noting, I'm complaining about the amount of painting relative to points value, but I say this as a bloke with an entire Empire army still on his boxes waiting to be had at after I finish this one. That I think was going to have a high miniature count relative to points value. As for the other things I've had to go at, we have this standard bearer who's really just made out of the regular rank and file troopers. I gave him a slightly big brass thing on top so he can overcompensate for something. And I've marked his base with a brass thing. Which I did with the demons before actually, because I couldn't be stuffed buying a specific type of model for that. And he's really there as an interim standard bearer when I don't want to do a big points game, because the main army standard bearer is going to be in a chariot. On top of that, we've got this lovely big fellow, the one who's annoyed because he's not in charge. He can be in charge of smaller armies. I just use the same basic painting technique. I haven't done anything special with the characters to mark them out. The miniatures are good enough, they look bold enough, you'll never miss them on the field. The only problem I've had with this miniature, or any of them really, is that sometimes the undercoat got a little bit speckly, which messes with the smoothness of the paint on a few miniatures, not too many. But it was noticeable on this one before I'd finished him. That's probably an artifact of trying to get the most out of 2 cans of undercoat, Citadel undercoat, while I was doing this army. They are quite pricey, so I was just maxing them out. I think in future I might be a bit more liberal with the undercoat, just trying to be spare with it. I'm just going to airbrush over the top in the next stage anyway. Doesn't do it any favours, so just a little lesson learned there. You may recall from my previous ranting that this guy's got some anger management issues, so he has his emotional support elephant who follows him around and keeps him happy. And that brings us on to the mage. Now this pricey fella and the mage I bought overseas when I was on a holiday, and good opportunity to buy miniatures that are so expensive. I have to check my thinking about whether I buy them normally, or at least that was my attitude at the time. I've gone on to buy a stupid amount of expensive limited edition Empire things. We'll see what the wisdom is there. So with the mage, I was originally going to do the robes in the dark blue, the same way I've done all the cloaks, including, say, this fella's cloak. That would have looked alright, but then I thought, no, he's a very expensive miniature, this one, and I really wanted to stand out the tabletop, so I thought, wouldn't he look lovely in a red dress? He's also been quite an expensive fella. I thought I'd play around with the transfers a bit more. So I've got a lovely little transfer, putting a bit of pattern on the dress there, and to balance it out, a little more runes on the dress on that side. Now, I was wondering what to call the mage. I've got some names of some of the other ones if I can remember what they were. But having done the lovely skirt in red, this fellow shall henceforth be known as Doris. And that brings us to the chariot. I wasn't always going to do the chariot. I find them to be very, very fiddly. But, they came in the box, in the army box. I figure I better use them. Yeah, I managed to hide the worst of the offences on this thing. I like to do chariots in a way that shows that a lot of them is actually made out of wood. Because if they're all made totally out of metal, like we like to imagine they are, they would weigh so much they would sink into the mud. So there we are. One bloke with an overcompensating big axe, and another guy who's explaining to us all why there's so many one-handed ex-charioteers running around in the Warhammer universe. I can only assume that they're left-handed. Right, so overall the miniatures are very easy to paint. There's what I like about Games Workshop miniatures. You just don't have to be a great painter to get a good result with not too much effort. I've taken to using dripper bottles and Vallejo paints for a lot of the painting. I still use Games Workshop paints mainly for the metallics, just because I'm more familiar with them. And I go through quite a lot of Nuln oil, as you might imagine. And I've made sure I've separated my flock and the right paints to the bases so that they all match together at the end of the day. Now, they look nice on the tabletop, at least with my middle-aged eyesight. I do feel sometimes like I'm cheating by getting such a table-worthy approach with so little actual effort. None of it's game-winning, none of it's award-winning, but it looks the way I wanted it to look, which is not something I've always been able to say. Here we have everything that I've managed to paint so far. 3 big boys in the background there, mob of about 21 or so marauders, 20 or so wolfers, what have we got, some cavalry in the back, 2 blocks of infantry with characters now, some heavy knights and a chariot. That weighs in at approximately 2,500 points. It's not entirely balanced, and if I'm going to be honest, there's not quite enough red. I'm going to remedy that soon. I've got 1 more block of infantry on the painting table, a bunch of fellas like this. And I've got another unit of heavy cavalry on the painting table like this. And once they're done, God, there's still more. There'll be another block of infantry, some more marauder cav, more marauder infantry, another chariot, that'll be red. And the boss, who's red, but his manticore is not, so, we'll see. So in the end, there's going to be a much higher percentage of red than what's here now. And this is the 1,500 points that I'm building this evening. Some slightly toned down characters than what I'd need for 2,500 points. And a few less doggies, 70 points less. A few less marauders, and down to 10, down from 21. No chariot. And 2 less giants, which is 400 points worth of difference, easily in itself. So hopefully, for the next video, I'll be able to show you how it went. Andrew, who's got his Beastmen army up and painted, has specifically asked to fight against these chaps, and I'll let you know how it goes. But for now, thanks for watching. Feel free to hit like, subscribe, and so on. It helps the algorithm along and encourages some more people to watch. But for now, it's time to call it a night.